My name is Laura Clifford, and we are recording this opportunity about STEM. So again, as I said at the beginning, you do not have to be an honors college student to take advantage of these opportunities. Also, this is just a sample of the opportunities. That's why we're going to take some time and go through the websites. So again, the format is I will go through the PowerPoint. You can put questions in the chat. After I'm through the PowerPoint, we will stop recording and you can ask questions during the Q&A, but you can also put questions as we go. One of the common questions that I get is about opportunities for US citizens versus non-US citizens. So some of the opportunities are limited to US citizens and some are not. For some of them, we have to look them up, but if I know one way or the other, I will try to state it for the group. So, what is the Undergraduate Fellowship Office? It is an office that promotes national and international opportunities to all MTSU students, okay? When you apply for a national opportunity, there are traditional steps that you have to do. A lot of that is writing essays and turning in your CV or resume. And I usually encourage students to use all the services on campus for that. So there is career services, there is the writing center, there's the fellowship office. You also have wonderful faculty. Many of you have family or friends. If your mother is an teacher or your dad just likes to read essays, encourage people to help you with these opportunities. We have a lot of MTSU students win national opportunities. I usually tell students you definitely will not win if you don't apply. So I encourage you. I'm not going to go through all of these opportunities and what they mean, but please know that there's a lot of MTSU students that apply and a lot of MTSU students who are selected. So how do you become strong for activities? Well, the first thing is to keep track of what you do, okay? So when you are putting together your CV or an essay, you need to be able to describe your leadership role within an organization. Meaning, if you're the president of the biology club, exactly does that mean? What did you do? What did you organize? How did you help your organization grow? Okay. You also want to find out about other opportunities. You want to ask your faculty, you want to ask your advisor, you want to look at the website. You also want to take some time and read the opportunities you're applying for. Some of them have a specific GPA that you have to do. And students are like, well, what is the one thing or two things I can do to be competitive? And there's not necessarily one or two things to be competitive. I usually encourage students to pursue things that you genuinely like, that you care about, and that you feel like can grow your professional skills, not just things for resumes. You also will, chances are, no matter what you apply for, you will have to have some kind of recommendation letter written for you. So you want to take the time to get to know your faculty. That means going to their office. That means thinking about the labs that they sponsor and the labs that they do. Your faculty really want to be able to write a personal letter about you. So you want to take the time and let them get to know you. You also want to give them at least a month's notice, a list of your activities or a resume. You want to tell them what you're applying for. I know that sounds funny, but if you are applying for a leadership position, then you should emphasize leadership on your resume or CV and give that to the faculty member. So unfortunately, and most of the STEM majors I work with do not like to write. Now, you may be the exception to that, but a lot of times you have to write a 500 to 1,000 word essay, kind of describing who you are and what your career goals are. Now, I have been doing this for 17 years, and the first time I applied for a 2-week Fulbright, I sat down, I had no idea what to write. I was supposed to write a 6-page, single-page statement about myself. Now, keep in mind, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I don't know what to do. So what I would encourage you to do is when it comes to writing, to seek support. The Writing Center, we don't have a lot of time to talk about what the Writing Center offers, but for example, they have a partnership program. That means that if you have a thesis or other project that you are working on and you want to meet with a writing partner every single week, you can do that. Okay. So you kind of have to dig deep for the personal statement. Okay. So this is my little asterisk. Um, if you follow the news, you know that things are subject to change, right? There are things that are being funded, there are things that are not being funded. So, with federal, state, and sometimes even private grants, you have to check the website for the most up to date information and for the requirements. And we will go through checking the website for the National Science Foundation. Local opportunities. All right. These local opportunities are open to both US citizens and non-citizens, okay? So they are through the Undergraduate Research Center, which is separate from the Honors College. They are a large office on campus, and their mission is to get MTSU students to do research, okay? It's not just STEM, but this is the STEM workshop, so that's where we'll focus. You can get a grant for a semester, 2 semesters, anywhere from $500 to $3,000, okay? You can apply for these grants any semester, summer, fall, and spring. And they have smaller grants for people who have 0 experience. So you really want to start working, you really want to do some research, but you don't have any experience, you can work with the Undergraduate Research Center. You do have to find a faculty person to work with, but if you go to their website, they have a number of resources to help with that. You can join their SOAR organization. You can go to one of their workshops. They also have websites on how to find a mentor. Jamie Burris is the world's nicest person, and I think Casey is her assistant. And if you're really trying to find someone to do research with and you're having difficulty, this is a good place to start. Okay. So now we're going to go into our interactive activity here. So Emily, would you mind dropping that into the chat? Now I'm going to pause just a minute because I want to go to the website myself and show you all a few things. So hopefully you took a picture or you can just follow along. So if we go to the website for that, it'll take me just a minute to pull up. Hold on. So Emily, can we see the directory here? Okay. So this is the directory of the different places on campus that you can do research. This is a great place to start. Okay. So we're just going to go to page 3 if I can. Oh, we're having a little technical with the changing of the pages. Okay, so for example, this is starting on page 3. It tells you the different places within STEM that you can do research with. So, what is the professor wanting? They want someone who has a basic understanding of general chemistry, okay? So they really want someone who has already completed organic chemistry. It tells you who the professor is, what they're doing, and it has some websites for you to go to. So we're not going to do that at this time. And it has more information. A lot of times before you meet with a professor to talk about their research, it's a good idea to kind of read these papers or at least take a glance at them so that you can get more information. So this is a good proposal. This is Dr. Grant Gardner, okay? And, who should join. It tells you that they want students who are able to be independent. It tells you a little bit about the qualitative data that they're doing, and you can contact the professor for more information. So I'm not going to go through this whole. Um, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my mouse here. I'm not going to go through this whole um, worksheet, but you can kind of get a feel for how this is working. So as a incoming freshman or sophomore or junior, wherever you are, okay, this is a really good resource to kind of cyber stalk professors, okay? Before you even talk to the professors, you can look at what do they want? Do you have to have specific um, skills, specific classes? So, I encourage you to dig into this document and kind of see what's out there. I have had students approach the professor and say, "Do you mind if I volunteer with your lab, like 2 hours a week, 5 hours a week?" You know, so I think this is a really good resource, and I think this really is underutilized by MTSU students in terms of understanding STEM. So now I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Here we go. Thank you for your patience. Okay, now we're going to talk about national opportunities. Okay, so at the end of this PowerPoint, I'm going to take you to the big website that kind of has a bigger list. So I'm just going through a few. So if you know, for example, that you want to get a PhD and do research as a professional career, that's your goal. For your professional life, then the Goldwater Scholarship might be a good opportunity for you. Typically, you need about a 3.75 to apply. It is nationally competitive. We have had students win the last 3 or 4 years straight. So we really try to help you be competitive for this. There's also National Science Foundation opportunities. Now, we are going to go to this website. The National Science Foundation funds a lot of research, okay? Currently, there's a lot of change around the National Science Foundation, but they're still funding research. They're still doing really good things. And the programs that they have called RAUs, Research Experiences for Undergraduates, are typically about 10 to 12 weeks during the summer. You do a specific project, you get paid a stipend, and they pay all your travel expenses there. There's really no trick to this except it is competitive. So the Nat Science Foundation RAUs have a few things in common. You do graduate level research typically. They help you get into graduate school. They also work on professional skills like grant writing, presentation, how to network. Housing is paid for, travel is paid for, and it's really the opportunity to get involved. I've had students get publications out of this, get research references out of this for graduate school. And so it's really a wonderful opportunity to dive in. Again, the applications usually start opening about November. You do have to have a transcript. You have to do some writing, a 1 to 2 page personal statement, and often you have to have at least 2 to 3 letters of recommendation. Sometimes previous research is needed and sometimes not, but you have to kind of explain why you're interested in particular areas. Okay, so interactive area number 2. So again, feel free to pull out your phone, or Emily, if you want to put that link in the chat, you can follow along with me, or you can go down the rabbit hole yourself looking at these opportunities. Okay, now we should be at the RAU website. Yes? Okay. So this is a search bar, all right? So what you can do with the search bar is look for opportunities by the type of research, but also by location. But let me just say it's not active, okay? So the opportunities usually open in November and close in, I'd say, February or March. So a lot of stuff you may go to it and it may say, this link isn't good, or it said this is not open. But I'm just trying to give you an idea of how this works. So I want to go over a few things on this website. The first thing I want you to notice is there's updates here. It says update to NSF research security policies. Okay. So it is talking about the research that is allowed and the research that is not allowed um, by the federal government. And I am kind of neutral in that I am just trying to describe to my students like what is allowed, what is not allowed. So, in terms of what is allowed, things have to be in line with the current administration, which probably means nothing about climate change and that type of thing. So, again, you can kind of look on the website for these kinds of updates. But I'm going to show you how to search. So, I'm just going to put in a search word. I'm going to put in botany because who wouldn't love botany, right? So when I look at botany, I see in the United States there are 9 specific places that are doing research on botany. So, I want to go to Missouri. Okay, so we should. Oh, there it is. So this is personal note. This is where my daughter did research for her REU. So it's a wonderful place. So if we click on the website, and Emily, if it doesn't follow along, tell me. So if we go to this website, we can see a lot of information here. So the first thing I see is the dates, which this particular RAU is June 2nd to August the 8th, okay? We can see the application period is closed. It talks about the eligibility for the program. You have to be a U.S. citizen or permanent resident for this program. For most of the RAUs, you do, but again, you can check the website. It talks about receiving travel, food, and lodging assistance, okay? And the deadline for this one is February 28th, okay? And we would assume a similar deadline. We can also look and see what projects they did last year. So if we click on there, I guess nothing's going to happen. In theory, we can click on that button and see the projects for last year. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so we can see the projects they did last year, and we can see the students that were selected. And you can see what they did. A lot of it is obviously around plants. So, you can kind of dig around with this website and kind of see the opportunities that are available. Again, you can search by area, you can search by search engines. I'm going to go back to the original website. I can do that. It'll take me just a minute. And again, we can see on the original website that if we go down here, you can see that topics, chemistry, and material science. So you can kind of look through here and see, what they're calling things. And you can look also by research area. So we didn't go through that button. Okay, so if you go over here, under biology, there's 148. Whew. Chemistry, 140. Okay, education, 1. Engineering, 160. You can also do research in an area that is not exactly yours. So the students that have gone on these projects have said, yeah, I went to a plant research project, but there was a chemistry student, chemistry major, and a biology major, and a physics major. So you don't have to go exactly, if you're a chemistry major, you don't have to go exactly to a chemistry one. You can look at the research, see if it interests you, and see if you want to apply. So again, I encourage you to play around with this website on your own to check it for updates around the National Science Foundation. Now we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Take me just a minute. Okay. So there are other opportunities through the National Science Foundation. One of them is funding for graduate school. There are other opportunities to fund for graduate school that I'll show you at the end on the larger website. But the National Science Foundation, the GRFP, pays for 3 years of graduate school, all your graduate school costs, plus it gives you a stipend of $37,000. So really good opportunity. There's something called the SMART grant, and that is for undergraduates and for graduates. It is full tuition, and then it has usually a really good stipend. But the SMART grant requires you to work for the Department of Defense at one of their facilities. So some students like that, and some students do not like that. The students that do like it because it's a guaranteed job, okay, and guaranteed internships during the summer. But the SMART grant is a good opportunity for students that have the motivation. Canada. So the Fulbright in Canada has internships, okay? Now, I will say for the Global Links Fulbright program, they want students who have already done some research. So if we think back to the website that I showed you originally, the Eureka, that laboratory, a lot of times you can get research experience here at MTSU, and you could then go apply for something like this and do research in Canada over the summer. And you can see, looking at this website, that it's requiring the personal statement, the CV, and the 2 letters of reference. Germany. So I had a fellowship to Germany and learned all about it. And there are many opportunities for research in Germany, okay? I'm gonna highlight one, and then we're gonna go to the larger database, okay? So the DAD RISE, it pays for research over the summer. This is for US citizens and non-US citizens. You just have to be at a college in the US, all right? So if you're in a college in the US, Canada, or the United Kingdom, you can apply. It is for summer research. They like students who have some research experience under their belt. You have to have a CV, letters of motivation. So you have to write something called a cover letter several times, and you have to have at least one recommendation. And it's really interesting. They have a database, which I can't open right now to show you, but it's an interesting database. So they have this giant database of 300 research opportunities in Germany in the summer, and you go in there and you pick your top 3. And you can search by filters, by specific terms like birds, or you could search by, physics, and apply for this. I have a lot of students who apply, and typically we get at least one student who is awarded this. It is not federally funded. It is not subject to those types of funds. So I encourage you to apply. And then there is the RISE Professional. This is for students that have a master's degree or PhD, okay, and they can get research experience over the summer. Or if you're getting ready to graduate from MTSU and you're like, darn it, I want to apply for some of these things, but I'm graduating, you can take this right after you graduate from MTSU and do summer research during the summer. This opportunity is to get your graduate school paid for in Germany, okay? So it's for your first master's degree, open to applicants from the US. Again, you do not have to be a US citizen, and you can get specific information at the website. So this website's a little wild, okay? So I'm gonna let you all take a picture, and then I will pull it up and show it to you. It's quite large. It's a little intimidating. So I'm going to stop share. Hopefully everybody got a picture or got it from the chat. Okay, everybody find it? Okay, so this is really a large database. There are 182 scholarships here, okay? And so you can say, oh, I'm from United States. Nope, nope, I did the wrong country there. United States of America. Okay. And I want programs for undergraduates. And let's just leave it at that. Okay. So when I do that, I get 26 options. Okay. And the Gilman, which we have not talked about, but the Gilman is study abroad money. The RISE, Germany is the research one that we talked to. And then you can keep going with this. The Foundation of German Business, German medical students. So, I mean, there's just a lot you can. So, if you have a real interest in Germany, this is a really good database to dig around in. Okay. And I'm happy to talk to you about opportunities in Germany. I was fortunate enough to be selected for a fellowship and spend a week there learning about their educational system. Okay. Other opportunities. So if you are a STEM major and you're interested in studying abroad, you can think about funding. Phi Kappa Phi is an organization. You don't have to be a member, but if you have a 3.75, you can apply for $1,000 to study abroad. The Education Abroad Office has a list of other scholarships you can apply for. This one we mentioned, we found it in the database. There's a scholarship called the Gilman. And if you have a Pell Grant and you plan to study abroad, you can apply for this. If you're planning to do any kind of research overseas, they have extra money for that. Or if you're going to study a language, they have extra money for that as well. And then if you want to go live overseas, if you're a STEM major and want to live overseas after you graduate, there's a program called the Fulbright. And the Fulbright has several options for living overseas. You can do independent research overseas. You can act as an English teaching assistant, or you can go to graduate school. And I've had students, one of my, early on, I had a student who was a biology major who wanted to go to medical school, do a teaching Fulbright in South Korea. Okay. So, you can be an assistant teacher for the Fulbright program, even if you are a STEM major. So what does Fulbright pay for? It usually is about 9 months after you graduate. It pays for airfare, room and board, your health insurance. Sometimes you can take dependents with you. They also have specific grants for research overseas. These can be a little complex. I'm not going to get down into the weeds to talk about how you apply for a research Fulbright. But I do want to note that those teaching and graduate school options are available, and you typically apply for this right before you graduate, or if you graduate from MTSU and a year later you want to apply for a Fulbright, that is perfectly okay. Thoughts and resources. So, okay, this is our last activity. So if everybody wants to go to that website, I'm going to stop share, and then I will pull it up. Oops. Okay, so this is the National Fellowship website. And I will say that sometimes you may need to go to more than one area. So sometimes these are cross-listed. So if you are interested in STEM, for example, okay, I have the Fulbright that we just talked about, the DAD, the NSF stuff, the SMART, but there's also something called SULI, which are research programs connected to the Department of Energy. I didn't necessarily mention that. And there's one connected to IT. But you're like, okay, I'm STEM, but I want to go overseas and I want to get a degree. Well, I didn't list all of these programs under there. So you have to dig a little bit. So the Gates Cambridge is full funding for graduate school at Cambridge University. We did have a student who got the Gates Cambridge several years ago. Um, there's also Knight Hennessy, which is not overseas, but it is paid for graduate school at Stanford University. There is a master's degree program in France. The Marshall is in the UK. The McCall McBain is in Canada. There's a lot of different opportunities here. I think study abroad is kind of an obvious resource, but there's different scholarships that you can apply for study abroad. Again, I encourage you to talk directly with them about that. Community service, honor societies. So, you kind of want to dig around a little bit. We have a lot of resources on our website. For example, if we go to the additional resource section, you can find there's a whole video about the REUs, okay, that you can watch. There's a link, opportunities for international students. And then if you just want to live overseas, there is Fulbright, but there's a whole tab here about how to live overseas and that type of thing. So, I mean, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I would encourage you to take some time to explore these. I'm happy to set up individual meetings and talk with you about your personal goals and what might be a match. But I encourage you to talk to other people as well. I don't know everything about the different resources, so it's important that you establish strong relationships with your professors, with your advisor, with the Career Development Center. And, if you decide to apply for something, first of all, read all about it and ensure that you think you're a good match. But keep in mind that um, life is a journey, not a destination. I mean, I myself have applied for a lot of things and I've been rejected from a lot of things. So I just try to learn from the experience, and that's what I try to get my students to do. Um, Again, you can meet with me. I have a wonderful GA named Rachel who also will do some appointments to help you kind of look through the resources.